Well, it's Friday. Friday's my favorite day of the week. It's probably your favorite day as well. After a long week of work, you get a half day and then it's the weekend. But this Friday was not a good Friday for Jesus. The week had started well because he'd arrived in Jerusalem and been welcomed as a king. But there'd been some lies told about him, and he'd been arrested. Worst of all, one of his friends, Judas, was the one who turned him in to the authorities. And now Jesus was in a cell waiting for what came next. It was Friday morning, and Jesus knew that this was the day when he was going to die. Earlier on in the week, the authorities had tried to put him on trial, but it wasn't a fair trial. They didn't have any evidence to see that he'd done anything wrong. But the crowd pressed the powers that be to sentence him to death. And he knew that he was going to die on that day. Jesus knew that this had to happen. It was part of God's plan. And even though he was an innocent man, he was going to have to suffer for the consequences. Now, you and I know that when we do something wrong, we have to pay the price. And that could be anything from being grounded or taking away our privileges. We were not allowed to watch TV or things like that. Jesus was an innocent man. He hadn't done anything wrong. But God's people had done something wrong. And so God had come up with a plan to pay the price for those consequences. He had to give something up. And Jesus was that thing that he had to give up. Because Jesus was God's only son. And Jesus was innocent. But if he paid the price, well, he gave us all a second chance. So this was it. Friday morning. And this was God's plan, and Jesus hoped that God could come up with something else, but this was what had to happen. The guards came and they took him from his cell and they made him carry a heavy cross on his shoulders all the way up the steep hill at Calvary. All along the route, the people jeered at him. They called him names, cruel names, and they spat and cursed and laughed as he went by, torturing him as he carried that heavy cross up the hill. And when he got to the top, he faced a truly horrible, painful death. So that day was a very sad day for Jesus' friends. They'd seen their great friend taken from them. And he had died and was going to be thrown into a cave, into a tomb. But for us, today is Good Friday. And this is a day that we remember what Jesus did for us. The sacrifice that he made to make up for our mistakes. And what would come next was something spectacular and something new.